recruiting wins championships. And you got to pay the cost to be the boss, which means that now I kind of want to get into the top 5 budgets in college football recruiting. It's important to say off the top, this is not my list. This is not an opinion list. This is a list that I need you to see and visualize that is from USA Today, where they have done the, my goodness, thankless work of tracking down all of these numbers to also kind of build in some context as to what people are spending and why. And we'll get into some of that minutia as we talk. But I'm going to go 1 through 5 here, just so you understand what it takes to being king in college football. So at number 1, we get the University of Georgia. And that should not shock anybody because Georgia has won the last 2 national championships. But I remember when they first won what I call the recruiting national championship, I said, yeah, this team's a problem. For which people going, oh, they started giving out national championships in February. Yes, they did, fool, because you see what Georgia has been able to do with its recruiting. Now, they spend $4.5 million. What does that mean? It means they spend just $1.5 million less on recruiting than they do on both, well, I shouldn't say both, on their entire assistant coaching salaries. 2022, assistant coaches at Georgia made about $6.6 million. They also spent $4.5 million in recruiting, okay? Now think about how the University of Georgia's football program is made up. It is made up of 5 stars and 4 stars who stay. Somehow, some way, Kirby Smart has created the kind of continuity that Brent Venables wants at Oklahoma, that Dabo Swinney has enjoyed at Clemson, and that somehow, whatever way, Nick Saban just seems to overcome at the University of Alabama. They'll get their Darion Kendrick at Georgia every now and again. But for the most part, you're going to see him develop guys and send them to the NFL. And that is what they're buying into, right? It takes a lot of money, not just to convince those guys to buy into that, but to facilitate the kind of recruiting and, let's say, pomp and circumstance that you need to ensure to parents, let alone recruits, that you're going to give them every bit of the advantage that they expect with their 5-star athleticism. That means on the field and off the field. That means opportunities, not necessarily in name, image, and likeness, but adjacent to it, right? So as we continue to talk about this, I want to go to number 2, which is laughable because it's Texas A&M. Texas A&M spends $2.98 million. Now, the first thing to underscore about that is Texas A&M spends, my gosh, $1.5 million less than Georgia on recruiting, which begs the question, what gives? Now, on the one hand, I think Texas A&M, like the rest of these programs we're going to talk about, needs to up the number, the amount of money that it's investing in its recruiting. But then you look at Jimbo Fisher's head coaching contract. And then you look at Jimbo Fisher's buyout, which is about the same. Like it costs $86 million to buy out Jimbo Fisher. For perspective, it costs $103 to buy out Kirby Smart, which is a lot of money. Basically, what Oklahoma and Texas are going to play to leave a year early. But you get my point here. There should not be that sort of disparity between Kirby Smart and Jimbo Fisher based on what they have done. It also begs the question, what do you have to get going right at A&M for them to be successful? Like, I was looking at their schedule and I was trying to figure out what a good number for them would be to say they're successful in 2023. It'd be 9 wins, but I don't see 9 wins. I see ULM, who you ought to beat, right? But I also see you can lose to Arkansas, you can lose to Ole Miss, you can lose to Bama, and now down the line. But important to note here, both Georgia and Texas A&M played Alabama closely, which is another way of saying they have the talent to go and do this. But putting together over the full year has been eluding them. But that talent does a lot. Does a lot. Just means you got to find the right ingredients, but you still got to be putting together the best and most valuable and expensive ingredients to even get an opportunity to play close to a team like Alabama, even when they're down to their backup quarterback in Jalen Milroe. Leads me to number 3 on this list. University of Tennessee, producer Cat's alma mater. They spend just a little bit less than A&M on recruiting, which I thought was mind-blowing, given what kind of shape Tennessee was in before Josh Heupel got there. Now, I'd also add Josh Heupel is a good man and a good coach who's not going to be caught with anything associated with, let's say, Ronald McDonald and 18 NCAA level 1 infractions. Okay. But it also really sells to me just how Tennessee was able to beat Alabama for the first time, basically since Nick Saban was head coach at Alabama. Okay. You did it with a guy like Hendon Hooker, who I swear to you, everybody thought was damaged goods before he got to Tennessee, to the Volunteers. And then you flipped him into what is basically what I think is the Max Duggan to their Chandler Morris. And Joe Milton is a more talented player. He just did not have the tools to operate the offense the way Hendon Hooker did. So that's why you go with that guy. But you needed other people around him. And you could go get guys out of the portal. You go get Brew McCoy, but you also got Byron Young, right? You are able to pull guys out like Squirrel White, who can help you go beat a Clemson team that feels like a national title contender because you recruited so well. And all Josh Heupel had to do was do what he did at Oklahoma. Play the best quarterback, put him in the best positions to win, stay out of their way, and do his thing. But you can't have this conversation about Tennessee beating Alabama without knowing that they are outspending Alabama in recruiting. You know how you know that? Just take a look at these top 3 here. Okay, which leads me to number 4 on the list, which is not the University of Alabama, the University of Texas, which again, to the A&M point, how, Sway, how are you this bad and spend this much money in recruiting alone? As a matter of fact, you'll remember last summer, longtime listeners of the show, people that listen to the show all the time, we did this big thing. Actually, we did like a 3-part series in June about Arch Manning. And we ended on how much money the University of Texas spent on the weekend that Arch Manning and others were hosted. And it was something like $600,000, which is a drop in the bucket when you're talking about what Arch Manning might mean for you and what being associated with the Manning family is going to mean for you. But also, when you're looking at the budget that they spend in recruiting, it's actually a sizable amount, which again leads me to this understanding of perhaps you too, like A&M, need to spend more money because you got it. You got it. You ain't got to lie to nobody. We know you got pockets that are deep. We know that, as much as I hate gas prices going up and down, y'all love this stuff when it gets to be like $3.89 in Tulsa, which I understand for the rest of y'all is like on the floor. But again, I'm in an oil producing state adjacent to oil producing states, so I don't feel those sorts of market pressures the way you do. But California, a lot of money going in the pockets in Texas where they ain't got no state income taxes. Yeah. Think about that. So you can afford to put more money into the football program because it's your plaything. It's like buying a new convertible. You get to just say that. And they give you a nice card and maybe you get some nice seats. But for the most part, they take your money and then they do this with it. Like, how are you number 4 in outspending people in recruiting? And yet you can't make the Big 12 championship, let alone a national semifinal. That's got to get fixed. And now with guys like Quinn Ewers, with Xavier Worthy returning, with the kind of talent that you can just get year in and year out, you should be doing more. Which leads me to number 5 on the list. That is finally the University of Alabama, who spends just a little bit less than the University of Texas to round out our top 5. Now, first thing is Nick Saban is Nick Saban, and to believe that you can operate like Nick Saban is really just ridiculous because you can't. Nobody can. He breaks a lot of rules associated with just basic cost-benefit analysis and economics, let alone college football, and still is able to go get 10, 11, 12 wins a game and every other year win a national championship. I still can't get over the fact that Alabama is calling an 11-win season where they beat the hell out of the Big 12 champion in a Sugar Bowl a down year. But they've earned that, and we got to deal with it. But even they can't just put their spending on the floor when it comes to recruiting. They have to be among the top 5 programs in all of college football to operate at the level that they want to operate at the University of Alabama. And at the University of Alabama, not unlike the University of Georgia, not unlike Ohio State University, everybody's on the program. What do I mean by that? You're not going to find too many people that are loud about not liking Alabama. Like, you'll run into some Auburn fans here and there in the state of Alabama, but for the most part, everybody on the program. I know this because the University of Alabama Birmingham knows that it depends on the University of Alabama to be good. One of the reasons they were allowed to have a football program in the first place. And one of the reasons they nearly got scuttled again. Because you can't compete with the University of Alabama because the University of Alabama is a state. Okay? Georgia football is the only thing that people care about until the Falcons play on Sunday. And then they care again about Georgia football. Okay? Ohio State, everybody on the program. Everybody's on the program. Everybody's pulling the same direction. It's Buckeyes this and Buckeyes that. In a state where they got two NFL franchises, Major League Baseball, an NBA team, and a friggin' NBA Finals title. And yet and still, it's Buckeye football, first, last, and everything in between. Now, what is also, and I think the most important part of this conversation, is that all five of these teams, come 2024, are SEC programs. Every last one. You saw that Texas Christian is able to get not just into the playoff, but beat the Big Ten champion with a roster that, frankly, made up of a bunch of transfer portals, kids, and can get there, but they're not spending this kind of money in recruiting. One of the reasons we all still think of it as a fluke year. But who's the team they beat? It wasn't Ohio State, who gave Georgia the business up until clock hit midnight and my man pulled the kick wide left. It's that Michigan is more or less doing more with less because they're not inside this top five. And most folks, myself included, did not expect them to be good last year, certainly not the year before that. And yet here they are. What if they spent like the University of Tennessee spends in their recruiting and just decided, yeah, if it's about money, that's easy because effort is hard. Strategy is hard. Money, if you got it, spend it. Universities all over the country would love to be in this conversation, but there's only a couple of others that can do this. Oklahoma being one of them, Ohio State being another one, LSU could be one, USC, UCLA. You get what I'm saying here. If we know your name and you are a brand program to us, there is no reason for you to not spend $3 million on your recruiting every year because that's what you're going to spend on your assistant coaches alone. Why not give them the best advantage to have the best players at their disposal? Because that's what Georgia does. And that's how Georgia has gone, I kid you not, 37-3 over the last 3 years. After nobody talked about the University of Georgia being the best program in college football. Nobody. And then they popped up there with a dude that had to get run off the JUCO at quarterback. This is what I'm saying. Like, I hate to be this simple about it, but if I can do this stuff on a legal pad and we can come here and we can do this segment, I got to believe that there are suits in and around these campuses that can do the same damn thing. I only ask, why aren't they? Because what the SEC has figured out, and what frankly it's going to take to beat them, is it just means more money. Thank you for watching the #1 college football show. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video so that you don't miss any of the best college football coverage in America.